Hey everybody, I'm Shamit Shome from the Montreal Impact, and I'm super excited to tell you guys a bit about my personal journey and story to getting to where I am today as a footballer. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I think William's doing a really great thing, giving a platform for players to talk about their own personal journey, as well as a lot of other things. So definitely like and subscribe, and let's get started. So I first started playing soccer when I was 4 or 5 years old. My dad just decided to throw me into a community program back home in Edmonton, Alberta, where I was born and raised. Probably when I was about 8 and playing community soccer, some parents and referees would come up to my dad and say like, "Hey, your kid is pretty good at this game. He should, you should consider maybe putting him into a club team so he can continue to get better." So probably when I was about 8, my dad put me into a club program. I tried out for Southwest United, which is another team based in Edmonton, Alberta, and that's what started my club career. Probably when I was 12 years old playing under 12, we had a mentor almost come in and help coach our team, and that was Len Vickery. But ever since he came in, he was kind of a big role model for me, and he kind of made it a goal for me to try to play for the University of Alberta, to make that team and to get a full scholarship there. So growing up, that was really my main goal, to just push myself every day, to work hard, just to be the best player I could, just so I could try getting a full scholarship to the University of Alberta. In the way that I was raised, education is so important to me that, I never really thought about being a professional soccer player until later on, which I'll get to later. So for me, my main goal was to get a full scholarship to the University of Alberta so I could, go to school for free almost and have fun playing soccer at the same time. So I guess the next big thing that happened for me, my first, achievement or accomplishment was during the time when I was around 14, playing under 14. There was the provincial team just started, and that's, it starts at the U14 age level. I ended up making that team, which was, super cool for me, but I ended up saying no to actually going to the tournament that they were taking part in, which was down in Montana in the United States. And the reason I said no was because my family actually planned a vacation for us to go down to somewhere in the United States as well, I think to New York. And for some reason, me and my family thought that was more important than going with the provincial team, which is something that I regretted now that I think about it. But back then I really didn't, know too much. I wasn't super serious about soccer, so, I didn't really think too much about saying no. So then interestingly enough, when I was, the next year later for the U15 program, I didn't make that team for the provincial team. And so that was kind of, hard to swallow for me, just because, I made the U14 team. I didn't end up going, but then, I got cut from the U15 team. So that was really disappointing for me, just because, the way I am as a person is I want to be the best player I can. I want to compete. I love to compete. And that's kind of what gets me going every day, is just, that will to compete and make myself a better player and a better person every day. So not making that U15 team kind of hurt a little bit. Another cool thing growing up was, my parents, obviously, coming from, a South Asian culture, they valued education, like I said. So they put me into a high school that was super academic, super, like, one of the best schools in Canada, honestly, for academics. So for me, being at the school, trying to focus on school, but at the same time playing in the academy was a difficult thing to balance both. And it was just, time management and discipline that really got me through it. But yeah, it was really hard because, I would go to school from 8 to 4, go straight from school to practice. And then straight from practice afterwards, I was working out in the gym, trying to get strength, because back then I was a twig and I knew that I had to really work on it. And looking back on it, it was super important. My days were starting at 8 and I was coming back home at 8, after going to school, training, and then hitting the gym and doing a gym session. So super long days. I look back at it, I can't really understand how I managed to do it, just because, you need a lot of energy to do that. But looking back at it to where I am today, I think those gym sessions and that extra work that I put in, aside from training and aside from school, really paid off in terms of just, how I developed physically and being able to, transition into playing professionally. And that started from when I was 16. And it just shows how, like, that extra 2-3 hours of work that I put in every day is paying off now, 5 or 6 years down the line, which is something super important for, I think, all young players who are trying to be professional to consider. So I joined the FC Edmonton Academy, when I was in grade 11. My goal, even when I was in the academy, was this is just another opportunity to make me a better player so that I can definitely get a full scholarship to the University of Alberta. That was still my mindset going into it, even when I was 16 or 17. Again, it's my own journey, it's my own story, which is pretty interesting, where I never really considered being a professional even at that age. Things started to change when I was in grade 12, just because I actually got my first call up to the national team with the U18s, and that was with Rob Gale, who's currently the head coach for Valor FC. So, I got a lot of CPL connections, which is cool. He was a great coach again. My first camp was in France. I was the new kid on the block. Obviously, a lot of those guys on the national team have been in the program from the U16, U15 age group. So me coming in at U18, I was kind of, I wasn't known of, and I really had to impress in my first camp. So now I started the second game against Ukraine, and I ended up getting man of the match for that game. My first ever cap for the youth national team. So that was a super cool achievement for me. And I think once I was at that national team camp and I saw that I could play just as well as any of the other guys there, that's what really made me consider becoming a professional, because that made me realize that I'm one of the best in the country, and maybe I can really go somewhere with this. The academy directors obviously heard that I've done well at the national team camp, and so they started considering me to be a part of the first team. So that's when I started, in grade 12, when I was 17 or 18, started training with the first team, not every day, but every couple of days, and just getting a taste of what it's like. And that was difficult because, I was just a 17-year-old skinny kid trying to compete with guys who were 10 times the size of me, 10 years older than me. And that was really difficult. And obviously back in the day, FC Edmonton was playing in the NASL, and that league was very physical, very aggressive, a lot of big guys. And so for a guy like me coming in at such a young age, not the most athletic, but obviously having a lot of energy and stuff, it was difficult at first, but definitely something that, I transitioned into doing well. So as I was, graduating high school, FC Edmonton actually came with me to offer me a professional contract. So that was, super cool for me. But at the same time, knowing where my parents came from, they really didn't really want me to go professional. They wanted me to go to school and get that stuff done with. And that's something that, I definitely understand. Being raised like that, I was told to value education, and it's something that I still value today. And so we kind of made an agreement where I decided I still really wanted to play for the University of Alberta, just because, it's something that I worked for my entire, as I was a kid, it's something that I really wanted to do. And so what we made an agreement was I'd play that my first year of university, of going to university, I would play that first fall semester, that first season, which is how long the U Sports season is just the fall semester. I'd play that fall semester with the University of Alberta, and then, in the winter semester, I'd switch over to FC Edmonton and start the season with them and sign my professional contract. And even when I told them about signing the professional contract in the beginning of January 2016, I want to say, yeah, I told them that I'd be doing school at the same time, and so that they'd have to be willing to adjust and accommodate, if I had to miss practice for whatever reason and whatnot. And obviously FC Edmonton was super cool with that. That was the club that I was playing with since I was 16, and I had a good relationship with all of them, and they believed in me and they trusted me, and so they gave me that right to do school at the same time, which was awesome. But anyways, my first university year, my rookie year playing U Sports went pretty good for me individually. Not so much as a team collectively. I knew that it'd be probably the only season that I play with the University of Alberta, so I really wanted to make it count. I ended up getting Canada West Rookie of the Year, which is a great achievement for me. But obviously I wouldn't have been able to do it without my teammates who were great along the way, and they were obviously more experienced than me. Looking back at playing in the U Sports for that 1 year, I think it was really important for me to play that season, just because it helped transition between playing with kids in the academy and playing with men in the NASL with FC Edmonton. I think U Sports was that perfect in between for me. And so just seeing how players are doing now with the CPL, going through the U Sports and then signing for a team in the CPL and doing well, it's something that I expected, and something that's great to see, because there's a lot of talented players in U Sports. It's not as hyped up as maybe the NCAA is, and that was another path that I was thinking of taking. But being from Canada, it was hard to get attention from NCAA teams. I had teams that were maybe talking to me, but they didn't want to offer me a full ride. They wanted to offer me 20%, 30%. And I kind of knew that I was good enough to be worth a full ride for some of these teams. And so, it's something funny, because I kind of forged my own path. I made my own path to get to where I am today. And it's very unique in that sense. When I was growing up to the MLS Super Draft seemed like a super cool idea to me, where players could go finish their education and get drafted and then play in the MLS. And so that was something that was super cool to me. But it never really became a reality for me, just because I knew I really couldn't go through the NCAA because I wasn't getting enough offers or attention from that league. My expectations going into the season was, I'm just gonna be a depth player. I'm not gonna play that many games. I'm just doing it so that I can get more experience as a professional soccer player, which is awesome. But I'm still doing my school at the same time, which was still my priority, honestly. But then as preseason went on, I ended up doing really well. The coaches were super impressed, and I slowly worked my way into a starting role. The first 3 or 4 games, I started off coming off the bench and doing well. And then there was a time where the team wasn't doing too well. I think we lost 2 or 3 games in a row. The 5th or 6th game, they decided to give me my first start. I played an alright game, and the coaches were happy with what I did. At that age, I may not have been as athletic or as strong as everybody else, but I tried to really use my head and think, and really use that sense of my game in terms of reading the game well. I had a lot of energy being young. I can cover a lot of ground, and so that's the kind of role that I took on. It was almost like a grinder kind of role where I just grinded in the midfield. I put in the hard work that maybe the other guys didn't want to, but that's what really helped cement my place in the team. And it's funny because growing up, everybody jokes like, if you're a grinder, if all you do is work hard, run, cover ground, people say you're not a good player. But that's really what I did all my youth career, and even in FC Edmonton, even to this day, to get to where I am. I feel like you gotta work hard, you gotta cover ground, you gotta give everything you can to be able to start off somewhere, and then after that you can let your passing, your technique show for your work, and that's really what I did. So that season finished up, and now I was in the off season, and this is where things get a kind of tricky. So this is end of 2016, beginning of 2017. My agent starts getting talks about maybe signing as a GA, Generation Adidas player, which is normally what they do for NCAA students, but I think the MLS wanted to kind of show that they're interested in Canadian players as well, because there was a lot of controversy at that time. So they wanted to come up with some program for something called Generation Adidas Canada. And at the time, there weren't many good Canadian players in the NCAA that they wanted to give the opportunity to. So my agent kind of did something to them where he told them, like, hey, like, this guy's playing in the NASL. He's still doing his school, so you could kind of throw him to the draft in that sense. And that's something that the league was interested in. Now, on my side, my family wasn't very open to it. And in my culture, it's not normal for the kid to leave home at such a young age. Usually you leave when you get married, which is when you're like 25, to 28. And here I am leaving, when I was 19 years old. So my mom was really against it. My dad was, so-so. He wanted me to continue playing soccer because, it's something he never really got to do when he was younger. He was taught to, school, and he ended up being, he's an engineer now, so he's a super smart guy. So I think just me having this opportunity to play soccer was kind of an opportunity for him to see me live a different life than he did. So I guess the first thing was trying to convince my mom to let me go. She was super against it. But in the end, I promised her that if I do go, wherever I get, drafted to, I would continue doing my school. And that's kind of a promise I made to her. And if I didn't make that promise, honestly, she wouldn't let me go. And I probably would have had to say no to the offer. At the same time, I was also hesitant about taking the offer because I knew it was a bit too early for me. I knew I had a good first season in FC Edmonton, but I knew that I also played it a bit safe because I wanted to keep that starting spot where, I didn't take too many risks. I played super simple. So I knew what parts of my game that I could develop and I could use to get better by playing games at the NASL level. And I knew I kind of maybe needed an extra season to get to that next step where then I could be ready for the jump to MLS. But at the same time, I don't know that, let's say if I didn't take the offer and I waited a year, would I still have an offer from MLS? That's something that comes once every while, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity again. So looking back on it, I'm super grateful that I did take the opportunity to sign as a Generation Adidas player and go through the draft. So what happened was I went into the combine. There was a lot of talk about me being, potential top 10 pick, which was super cool, and that's where I expected to be. I was playing professional soccer. These guys were coming from college. I guess this is where I kind of learned the first step of being a professional and how important it is to be professional in terms of your diet, your fitness, your health. So that was my first off season, I guess, after the FC Edmonton season and before, the draft and the combine. And I didn't really know how to take care of my body. So, I was hanging out with my friends. I was eating a lot, going out to restaurants, just having fun. And I didn't realize, but I was gaining a lot of weight. So by the end of the FC Edmonton season, I was probably, weighing around 155 pounds. By the beginning of the combine, I weighed 165 pounds. So I gained 10 pounds, and I didn't even realize because, I wasn't paying attention to my body. I didn't really realize what it was to be a professional, and, I didn't have the best combine. I wasn't that fit. I didn't play very well, which was, disappointing. And then obviously my stock dropped a lot, and I ended up getting drafted, 41st by Montreal. So I was disappointed by how low I dropped into the draft system, but I'm super grateful that I got picked by Montreal because, it's a team that's still in Canada, so I'm still familiar. It's easier for my school. And I think overall, I'm just more familiar with staying in Canada. So, in the end, that's a great thing that happened to me. Now, as soon as I got drafted by Montreal, what's interesting is that we had the U20 World Cup coming up, and we had the U20 World Cup qualification right after that draft. So I ended up flying straight from, Los Angeles, where the draft took place, to Toronto for the pre-camp that was happening right before the U20 World Qualifiers. And, ever since I first started with the U20 program or the U18 program, which turned into the U20 program, I think I was really going to be a big cog and a big piece in the midfield for Rob Gale, and he had high expectations for me. And so I almost let him down in that sense where, I came in unfit. I was, 165 pounds, and so I couldn't, perform very well. So what ended up happening is because I was so overweight, I think, and just because I wasn't, taking care of my body, I ended up getting a stress fracture. And I don't know if I got that during the combine or during the pre-camp, but it's something that took place, and it was, it was heartbreaking for me because of that stress fracture. I couldn't go to the U20 World Cup qualifiers. I couldn't help us qualify for the U20 World Cup, which is something that I was, that was my biggest goal, I think, even before being a professional athlete, was to make that U20 World Cup. So that was super disappointing. And then obviously I came into Montreal in my first year in the MLS injured, which is like a nightmare for anybody who joins a new team, who gets drafted, who's trying to prove themselves as a young player. So that was tough, man. So, I moved to Montreal, and that first year transitioning to playing in the MLS was really difficult for me, just because it was my first year living away from home. I was babied so much by my mom and dad growing up, them cooking food for me, them giving me everything I need. And now living alone, doing my own laundry, cooking my own food, it was tough, and I couldn't handle it at times. I was eating a lot of junk food, eating out just because I didn't want to cook. And those are things that, really made it difficult for me to be a professional footballer, to, taking care of my dad, because those things are so important in order to perform at the best level you can. Because at the professional level, what I realized is, that 1 or 2% is all the difference you need. That's what can separate you from another player, is that extra 1 or 2%. And at that time, the way I was eating, the way I was sleeping, I was gaming so much with my friends back home. I was having energy drinks every night just so I could stay up later and play video games. I wasn't living a good lifestyle that would, set me up to do well on the soccer field. So that was, that first year was brutal. I didn't go anything according to plan. Luckily enough, by the end of the season, I ended up finding my feet and I was doing really well. The coach was super impressed with me. He was telling me he really wanted to play me, but the team was in a bad spot in terms of making the playoffs, and so he couldn't really give me that chance that I deserved, that I really think I did deserve. So that was disappointing, but at the end of the day, that's football. You're training super well in practices. You're doing better than a lot of guys that you're seeing are starting, but you're not getting your shot. And that's what it is as a young footballer, because, you don't have that experience that other guys have. So anyways, that was my first year. Pretty difficult, a bit disappointing, but I was ready for my second year. We had coaching change. Remy Gard came in from Lyon. So he had a very high rep, a European coach. I was super excited to work with him. But the odds were kind of against me, I guess, in my second year, because I didn't have any games in my first year. The general manager who stuck around didn't really think I deserved to play. He knew I needed games, so he really wanted to send me on loan to a USL team to get more games. And so that's kind of what the coach heard rumors about already before he even came. So coming into the second season, I guess, there weren't very high expectations for me. And to be fair, in preseason when I did play, I got opportunities to play. I didn't do very well. Just, I think confidence-wise, I wasn't there. I didn't believe in myself enough. And I think that's super, super important as a player is to believe in yourself and to have that self-confidence that you're better than anybody else that's there. There's guys that are from Europe, there's DP players, but you have to compete with them. You can't be afraid of them. You have to be willing to kick them in the legs and try winning the ball, because that's how you get better as a player. And at that time, I just wasn't feeling that like that. I just felt like I was, not superior. I was like inferior to all these other guys that were there. And that's really why I struggled. So I guess right after preseason, the club decided to loan me to Ottawa. And I was there for 2 weeks. And then we had injury problems back in Montreal, so they called me back. I guess it was a hard point in my life. I was crying coming home from training because I was still playing left back, right back. I was sick of it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I just hated it. But then there was a couple guys on the team that really, took me aside and they really told me, what it takes to be a professional footballer, just that mentality to stay strong, to just keep working hard. One of those guys was Jukka Raitala, who still plays with Montreal Impact. A big role model for me, just because he's so professional, he's so proper, and I've learned a lot from him. So anyways, once I came back from Ottawa and I was back in Montreal, I was playing out of position, just filling in the numbers, and I knew that was my role. But I didn't really let that affect me mentally anymore. I didn't care where I was playing. I didn't care what the coach wanted me to do. No matter what I was doing, I just worked as hard as I could, and I grinded as hard as I could to get better. And slowly but surely, I started getting better and better and playing better and better. And the coach started noticing it. And he started recognizing me a bit more and saying like, hey, like you look like a completely different player than you did in preseason. And I felt that too, and it's just because I was growing in confidence, which is why having confidence in yourself is so important. So anyways, around the middle of that season, the coach decided to start giving me some opportunities. Sam Piet got injured in the game against Sporting Kansas City, and so there was nobody else that was available on the bench that was a midfielder, and so he threw me in. I ended up playing, I played about 55 minutes in that game, and I played very well, and we ended up winning 1-0. And I think that's what kind of set myself in a good position with the coach. And so I got about 5 or 6 games in that season, which was not what I wanted. I wanted a lot more games, but it was a good first couple steps. So now going into my third year in Montreal, which was last year, we had the same coaching staff, same everything. And this year I really had high expectations for myself because I knew towards the end of that season in 2018, I was doing well. And so I really wanted to build on that. The first game that I started was against Sporting KC in 2019. And we ended up losing that game 7-1. And I got subbed off in the 55th minute. I made a really big mistake, big turnover that led to the 6th goal that they scored. So it was just a bad day for me, for the team, for everybody. But I really took it hard on myself because it was the first start I had, and I really wanted to prove myself because I did have a good preseason. Anyways, so when I got subbed off, just because I was mad, I ended up taking my jersey off and throwing it on the floor. And it was more so because I was pissed at myself for making that big turnover that led to the goal. Anyways, the fans saw that, everybody saw that, and it didn't look good. It looked like I was disrespecting the jersey, obviously, which, I had no intention of doing, but that's what it looked like. And I should have never done it in the first place, but, it is what it is. I did it in the heat of the moment. I care so much about how I play and how I do, and I care so much about soccer. I'm so passionate about it that, in the moment I ended up throwing my jersey on the floor. So it wasn't a good look. The fans were really mad at me. Everybody's really mad at me. The next day I came into the coach's office in tears saying like, look, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do it. Because of that, I was really just mad at myself. And the coach is a great person. He understood that that's where I was coming from. And, I was so scared though, because I knew I played bad. I knew the coach gave me an opportunity and I blew it. And I was really worried, like, will I get another opportunity? But 2 weeks down the line, we had another midweek game. Coach gave me another opportunity, which I'm super thankful for. But still, I felt like I was still fighting against the fans because the fans really still weren't happy with me from that moment where I threw my jersey. And so I just had to keep taking little steps to make my way back in with the fans and with the coaches. So, I kept playing. I ended up slowly but surely becoming a starter in the team. And so that was great for me. I scored my first goal against New England Revolution last year. I got my first assist against Real Salt Lake last year. So, 2019 was a big season for me to step out and kind of show myself. I think I had close to 30 appearances, which was amazing. And, that's where I am today. Today I'm in a new situation where I'm with, we have a new coach in Thierry Henry, a legend of the game. And it's amazing to learn from him as a coach because, he was such a big player and he knows so much about the game. So for me, that's been, a super, super cool experience. And interestingly enough, I'm seeing that, I'm starting to play in he's trying to play me in different positions, sometimes as a right back, sometimes as a right winger, sometimes in midfield. And I think just looking back on it, all those times when I was training as a right back or out of position, in 2017, 2018, and 2019, they really set me up to be where I am today. Because on our first game against Saprissa, playing at home, he put me on right wing. He played me as a right winger. Against New England, I subbed on and I had to go into right back because somebody was injured. And so I think those times where I was playing out of position, I may have hated it back then, but looking back on it, it was super good for me to just become more versatile of a player. Now the coach can rely on me to play in multiple positions, which a lot of players can't do. And I think that's a huge trait to have because you got to be flexible. There's players that are going to be injured, and so the coach is going to need to rely on you to play different positions. And that's kind of my role now where, I can fit in everywhere the coach needs me just because I can understand the tactics that we play with and the positioning just because, I've played in all those different positions in training because we didn't have the numbers for me to be in the midfield. So that's something looking back on it that is super, super cool. This year I just finished my engineering degree at Concordia University in Montreal. So that was a huge accomplishment. Obviously, it's something that I told my mom I would do, and obviously she was more excited than me when I graduated. So happy to have that done. But yeah, that's pretty much where I am today. Just grinding, trying to be a better player every day. Whether I stay in the MLS, go to Europe, go to the CPL, wherever I end up, my mentality is the same, and that's just to put my head down and work as hard as I can to be the best player I can. That's kind of what I've stuck with since day one, both in school and in soccer, is just, work as hard as you can, be the best player you can be the best person you can be, and good things will happen. And so, that's pretty much my journey. I thank you guys for listening. It was a bit all over the place because, it's hard to remember everything that happened, but I hope you guys get a feeling and an idea of what my story was like, and hopefully I can inspire some of you guys to, to take these steps to become a professional footballer. At the end of the day, when I look at it, I'm probably the only South Asian player South Asian descent player in the MLS, and one of the very few that are playing around the world. And for me, that's a huge honor, and I take that, very humbly. Where I want to be inspiring to other people that are like me, that look like me, to step out of their comfort zone, step out of their own boundaries, and kind of push themselves to exceed boundaries and make your own journey, make your own path. So yeah, hopefully you guys see this, and it's inspiring, and I wish you guys all the best. And if being a professional footballer is what you want to be, all I can say is just put your head down and work. Be the best player you can, be the best person you can, and good things will happen to you. Thanks, guys.
And on we'll